If Arsenal Football Club can't even beat a championship side, what hope on earth have they got of beating Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium? None, I say. Get them out, all out, right now. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is our Let's Talk Arsenal show. I'm joined by the queen of the Arteta outs. It's Sophie. How you doing, Sophie?
Proud to wear that badge. Hello, Mr. Tom. How are you?
All
Super
good.
Tom.
All good. I just took off my
Yeah.
QPR shirt before I hopped on the show, because I'm switching teams. That's what people do apparently these days. If you're a content creator and you're not happy with your club, you switch teams, and you move to a different club and you support them for the rest of the season. So I guess it's QPR now, Soph.
Now, listen, I thought you were a millennial because the Gen Zers of the world, maybe some millennials, they support players, right? Not necessarily teams. So they got shirts from everyone. So I'm glad you took the QPR shirt off before we came on air. When you reached out to me this morning, I was like, what? 4-0? Really? I mean, is anyone taking this seriously? Yes, they are, Tom.
Yes, they are.
They are.
Yes, they are. Oh dear, it's a crazy world. I guess we should probably provide the context of this. Arsenal took part in a behind closed doors friendly today against QPR. It wasn't done at London Colney or the Sober Realty Training Centre. It was done instead at, I think, QPR's training ground, the TSG Elite Training and Performance Centre. Only 2 senior Arsenal players were involved, and only for a maximum of 60 minutes. It was 45 minutes for Tomiyasu, 60 minutes for Partey, and the 11 that started the game was Ejeheri in goal, Nichols, Robinson, Foran, and Tomiyasu as the back 4, Partey, Lewis Skelly, Gower as a midfield 3, and Koja Dubry, Butler, Oyadeji, and Kamara. So it didn't even feature the likes of Ethan Nuneri, and players of that kind of caliber either as well. So it really was. There were some substitutes in the game. Rojas came on in goal for Ejeheri at half-time. Zuzak came on at the back as well. Casada Thorne, Kabia, Bandera, Uladamhand, and Rosiak also came off the bench for the rest of the game. As I say, Tomiyasu playing 45, Partey playing 60. I mean, first things first, I'm not even going to reference the scoreline because I think it's irrelevant in games like this. I'm going to talk about it, Sophie, in the reference of 2 players getting some important minutes and building up their fitness ahead of a run-in in which hopefully we'll have them both available for. How important do you think they're going to be?
I think very important. And I don't like the cliche of, it will feel like a new signing, right? Because all teams experience injuries. I wouldn't want to say spare a thought for Newcastle. I think probably one of the most ravaged injury hit teams this season is definitely Newcastle. But at this point in the season, when you do get players like this back and you're dealing with maybe some fatigue of the starting 11, I think it's fundamental. And then not just average players. And I say this with respect, right? The bench, it's great that Emile Smith-Rowe's on the bench. It's great that Reece Nelson is there to maybe have one of those super sub moments. But we're talking about a quality player in Thomas Partey, who luckily we haven't missed much this season because of the way our midfield has been operating. And we've always wanted to be like Liverpool, Manchester City. You bring, say, Jorginho or Declan Rice off the bench or whoever, you got Thomas Partey to look forward to come on. You take Ben White off or you take, Zinchenko off or Kivio off, you've got Tomiyasu to deal with for the next 20, 25 minutes. It's the same thing with Martinelli and Trossard. You take Trossard off and you look over and you think, oh, crikey, Martinelli's coming on for 25 minutes. So I've got to deal with that now. So from that perspective, I think it's great for the team. And they are players who can contribute, and we have seen them contribute in the past. And I'm just happy to see, especially Tomiyasu coming back, because I think that he could really make a massive difference in that back line, definitely, as the final stretch kicks in. The final act of the season. How will it end? Oh my God.
How will it end? Yeah, there's 10 games, I think, for Arsenal left in the league. Of course, we've got the Champions League against Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals as well. It feels like Arsenal again, involved in a title race. I've never been able to cover. I don't think even the Arsenal podcasting world has talked about a Champions League quarterfinal and a title run at the same time. I think this is a first for the new age of fandom. I'm thinking
Yeah.
back. Yeah. I mean,
Well, I was
Arsblog
thinking, who was
started in,
podcasting in 2010? Was it
you know, Andrew would have been
Andrew?
podcasting in 2010. Yeah. I don't know if he started. Did he start in 2006? I feel like I've listened to so many of his shows where he did talk
Mhm.
about when he started. I feel like it was the 2000s that Andrew kicked things off.
Yeah.
So maybe, but
Because I
certainly not.
remember I started I think my blog was 2008. I wasn't podcasting till probably 2010, 11, 2011.
What were you
Um,
podcasting in 2011? What was the
I was
show?
doing a lot of stuff. I was doing a live show called World Football Daily in Los
Mm,
Angeles and doing stuff for them. And then I started kind of like doing my own stuff when I was covering the US women's national team. So
mm,
I was talking to like Hope Solo and Carly Lloyd and people like
uh,
that, Alex Morgan. No
yeah.
one was really listening to me, but I was doing it, Tom. But
Is
yeah,
that
the
Alex Morgan
Podfather
is
would be one.
the T is it T
Yes.
girl? Ugh,
Yes.
not a
Yes.
fan of that. Not a fan of that. Terrible. Goodness
Ah,
me.
she's a good
Um,
player.
oh no, she's fantastic. Yeah, brilliant footballer. But yeah, it's interesting now that we are in this state that we're covering kind of this run that we've never spoken about in this era of fandom at all with all of
Mm.
this going on. And I think that, you know, Tomiyasu and Partey, I think they will have a part to play. You know, our fixture schedule coming up is very, very, very tricky. And for those in the chat box that keep talking about Saka, don't worry, we're going to talk about it. We'll get there. But just kind of getting this title run and kind of the fallout to the squad depth out of the way. We've got City on the 31st, and we're straight into midweek fixtures with Luton at home on the Wednesday, or away to Brighton on the Saturday, at home against Bayern Munich, and then home again to Villa on that weekend, away to Bayern Munich that midweek, with then away to Wolves in the Saturday, April 20th game. That Chelsea game could then get rescheduled for that midweek following, and then we've got Spurs away from home. Then, if we get past Bayern Munich, you've then got the midweek Champions League semi-finals, home game to Bournemouth, second leg of the semi-finals in the midweek. Then you're away to Manchester United, and then it's one more game, and then it's done. So there is a reality where Arsenal may have 2 games every single week until the rest of the season is done, bar the final week, if indeed Arsenal get through and pass Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals of the Champions League as well. Players like Partey and Tomiyasu will have a part to
Mhm.
play. Do you foresee? Because what I've noticed about Arteta is that when we think he's going to rotate, he doesn't. He tends and he'll go with those same. I remember he went with the same team, I think, against Porto as he did against
Mhm.
Brentford the weekend before. And everyone was like, oh, maybe we'll rest Jorginho, bring him back in for that Porto game. He didn't. Is there any potential concerns there that he might burn players out somewhat?
Well, firstly, I'm exhausted after you just went through that schedule. And I was
Sorry
also
about
thinking, time to book a holiday because you got to look that far ahead.
that. Indeed.
We've seen him burn out players before, but that has been because he hasn't trusted the players that he's had
Mm,
on the bench. And I know that we still have I was listening to you and Harry the other day, and, I was making the point in the chat about we're all after the Zubimendis and the Osimhens of the worlds and the Rafael Leao and all these types of players, but what about where the core, the backbone of a championship run comes in? What does your bench look like, right? And
mm,
I think our bench has actually looked pretty solid. Like the other day when you're playing in a Champions League match and you've got Jesus on the bench, you've got Zinchenko on the bench, you've got players that will be like Thomas Partey will be on the bench, Tomiyasu. I mean, those are quality players. So I think Mikel's matured as a manager. I think he's grown up a little bit. He's realized that you just can't win. We were going for one competition
mm,
last season. Now we're going for two. You can't do it with the same 11 week in, week out. He's going to have to manage Jorginho's minutes. He's going to have to see like where does Zinchenko fit now, considering how well Kivior's doing. Is he a player that I'm going to trust in the Champions League? He's been there before. Same with Jesus. I think Jesus is hugely valuable in the Champions League run. So for me, I think
mm.
that he's learned from his mistakes as well as our players having learned from their mistakes in terms of kind of, that final run when the spotlight's on them. How do they perform? But also, how does Mikel manage it? And I trust him more this season to manage it better than he did the previous two because I think he's got better players at his disposal on the bench to trust.
Oh, without a question, he's got better players to trust now. I think you look at the bench. I remember that last game of 2 seasons ago when we had the likes of Zach Swanson, pretty much on the bench of every single game. Even last season, you had players on the bench that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see there. Raw Water's been on the bench a few times this season because of the injuries we've had. It's not to do with a lack of squad depth. We've just had such bad luck with injuries and players like Jesus and Tomiyasu and Partey continuously being hit at times. Erdegaard had a period out. Martinelli and Trossard have had periods out. Saka's obviously missed the City game already. We'll talk about his absence from the England squad in a second. I'll tell you what's really funny about this Saka situation, right? So I'm going to the England-Brazil game on Saturday to cover it because I thought, there'll be loads of Arsenal players involved in this game because you've got Gabriel Martinelli, you've got Gabriel Magalhaes, Jesus might get a call up, you've got Saka, Ramsdale, Rice, you've got all the... So we're Football London, so we're covering all the other London teams as well. And now Gabriel's out injured, Martinelli's out injured, Saka's pulled out. I'm assuming Declan Rice is going to have a cold tomorrow, so he won't be involved in any way, shape or form. Ramsdale's obviously not going to play. So I'm just looking at it now like I'm basically going to be doing a watch-along of Declan Rice for 90 minutes. But, of course, we do cover Chelsea and Spurs. So there is a fair few of those guys in. And with the Ben White drama going on at the moment, which I might get your thoughts on in a second, there's also that to discuss. But it's just one thing after another for this
cracking
game.
me up.
It's ridiculous.
You know what, though? To that, I say amen. Yes, finally.
We're being
Arsenal,
savvy.
Listen, with Gabriel XL, I'm not too sure because Brazilians love to play for their country, right? I'm not saying that English players don't, for some.
Yeah.
But I believe, and let me know what you think, chat, because I think that it's not conspiracy theory, it's just a thought, that we are mastering the dark arts. I was saying on our show last week, the dark arts rising. Have our players had a little word, or Mikel's had a little word with our players? Listen, you wake up, you get a niggle, just, give us a call. You will sort it out. I feel like this is a Sir Alex Ferguson, without all the trophies in the cabinet, of course, and other managers who have mastered the international dark arts, Tom. I think that, it's at that time, and these are meaningless games for England, are they not? They're just friendlies. So he knows what Saka's going to do. Saka's going to be a starter at the Euros. Yep. So for me, maybe a little bit of dark arts from the Gunners and our players.
Yeah, I think as in terms of Gabriel, that's caution, precautionary. To my understanding, the Saka situation is just precautionary. This is the international break where nations are quite lenient when it comes to allowing players to go back to their clubs if they're worried or they're concerned, because you've got an international tournament on the horizon. You want to have a good relationship with the club as well at that point, with so few games left of the season, with them so important to their teams. I'd be shocked if Gabriel and Saka aren't involved in the game against City. I really would be shocked. So it's going to be, if anything, muscular, and it'll be, I can't see it being anything too serious whatsoever. So I could be wrong. Obviously, I always preface that and say, I'm not there, but certainly the noises are that it is precautionary at this point. We've seen De Bruyne pull out of the Belgian squad.
Haaland, did
Haaland's limped out of training.
Come on,
my leg!
Sorry.
Oh no, I can't. Oh, dearie me, ref. So, yeah, I can't see him not playing. I can't see De Bruyne not playing. Harry Kane obviously had a bit of an issue before the break with Bayern as well. He is expected, I think, to miss the game with Brazil this weekend as well. So that's another player I won't be seeing play.
So bad, isn't it?
Ivan Toney could be the guy to watch this week. I think Ollie Watkins is more likely to start than him. But it's a threadbare squad at the moment. So yeah, very, very interesting indeed to see.
Tom, can I just add real quick, because if anyone missed the Rob Holding interview where he talked about how injured Benjamin was last season in that Newcastle game, this is, I think, the lessons that we're learning. It's all well and good going out there and doing your best that you can. When you don't have backups to be able to kind of, step in, it's very difficult. And players play through injury all the time. I mean, especially in American sports like the NFL, the NHL, players are injured all the time. There's not
Yeah,
one player who feels healthy throughout the entire season. And the same thing is happening now in football because why? The demand on players is so much. They're playing more games. And so I'm hoping that we've become a little bit more savvy about that.
indeed. Yeah. And we look to be as well. By the way, speaking of Haaland, have you seen Norway's new kit?
Yes.
It's unbelievable. Like, yeah, I I made some terrible noises when I saw those for the first time. I was speaking to a Norwegian journalist friend of mine who was there, and very smugly Jonas Adnan Geva, who was sending me very smug pictures of Erdegaard's shirt because it's even got kind of the Nordic text on the names and the
Yeah.
numbering as well. It looks stunning. I'm definitely going to have to get hold of an
That's the one
Erdegaard
with the
one.
colors running down the center,
Yeah, the
right?
central stripes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was hoping the US jersey would look like, if I'm
Yeah,
being
it would fit,
honest.
wouldn't it? It would work really
Yeah,
well. But yeah, it's got like
yeah.
the different shades of blue for the blue part of the Norwegian flag, then the white, because the white obviously outlines the blue in the flag, and then the different shades of red with like a burgundy block color. And then the sleeves have got like a white and blue
Mm.
trim and
Are you gonna buy it?
yeah. Yeah, yeah, take my money now. Honestly, Arsenal also released today. I was sitting in the hairdressers waiting for my haircut. I mean, what else are you waiting to do in the hairdressers? I know what else you'd be waiting for. But I was waiting in there, scrolling through my phone, and I was looking at the Norwegian kit, trying to work out how to buy it. Which, by the way, the only place I found that's selling it at the moment, I'm sure there'll be Nike will sell it on the website eventually, was a website that can't sell to Britain because of Brexit. And I'm
Oh,
like, great, thanks everyone that voted that. You stopped me from getting
you
this kit.
rotteners.
Yeah. And then as I was looking at it, I got a notification on my phone from Arsenal saying retro collection just released. So I ended up spending like 50 quid on a 80s Arsenal shirt,
I
which
s
is,
I
yeah,
saw the JVC one. Did you buy
yeah,
the
yeah,
JVC
yeah,
one?
yeah.
The
Yeah,
other one is pretty hot.
it is with
Yeah.
the blue. Yeah. I think
Mhm.
that, you can have Thomas or Rocastle or Adams on the back of the 80s one. And I just thought, I wasn't around in the 80s to watch Arsenal, and I know I've watched back clips of Arsenal in the 80s and even as far back as the 70s when Liam Brady was doing his magic. But, I just felt like, no, I'm not going to put a name on the back of this because it feels a bit wrong. I don't know why. I just felt
Why?
like I'd be,
Because you didn't live through it?
yeah, I didn't see it. I haven't got an attachment with those players. I got an attachment to them as like historic figures that I look back on, especially Rocast and all the emotion surrounding him.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It just felt weird about getting a name on the back of the shirt of a player I've
I
not watched.
understand that, as long as you didn't put your own name
No,
on the
I don't
back
think
of
you
the shirt,
can. I think you only get a
which
choice
is
of those 3.
okay.
I haven't put my own name on the back of a shirt since I was about 12, as I think. I think that's the last time, and it was completely
So
against
he
my will. It was
says.
given as a birthday present. So, and what was even worse, it was put on the back of an Arsenal. It was the Arsenal away kit that Cesc Fabregas scored in the San Siro. That weird goal that kind of he hit along the floor and just kind of bounced into the bottom left hand corner.
Not to
In like,
us, it wasn't weird.
no, I know it wasn't, but it was like, and the net was like the most saggy net
I
you've
love
ever
those saggy
seen.
nets. I miss those.
And yeah, and so that kit, and I got given it for my birthday, and they'd gone to like a Sports Direct or a JGB Sports at the time when that used to exist, and gotten like their own brand number and lettering rather than like the Premier League or the Arsenal, and it looked disgusting and not in a good way. And I was I remember
Mm.
being. I was just looking at my parents. You know those classic videos of inconsiderate children that get given a PlayStation instead of an Xbox or something, and they're like, "This isn't what I asked for." Their parents spent like 400 quid on this new console, and you're like, "You inconsiderate little kid." I
Spoiled
did the exact
Tom.
same thing. I was like, "How dare you put this number and lettering on this shirt you spent 100 quid on or whatever?" So yeah, goodness me.
I can
Anyway,
imagine fans who lived through that time would find it difficult. Like Thomas, of course, the iconic goal,
mm,
Rocky, just for everything that he stood for, Adams for just being captain fantastic. I can't pick out of the three. And I just love another merch drop. Is that number 10 this season? Just asking for a
mm,
friend. that's, a,
mm.
that's a lot of merch, but yeah, when you're doing well, milk it as much as you can. That's what
Yeah. I love this from Paul
every
as well.
club
He
does.
says, Tom, never put a name on the back of a 70s or an 80s shirt because they wouldn't have had the names on the back. It would have just been
This
the
is
numbers.
very true. Well said, Paul.
Very
Facts.
well pointed out. So why are
Yeah.
they doing that then? Why? Yeah, it feels a bit odd. Modernizing them. Obviously, they are
Each letter
replicas.
costs something more, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, we found the reason. There it is. We
Hey,
got to pay for that number 9 in the summer. There we
we call
go.
that upselling in the business.
um, Ben White. I talked a lot about this morning. In fact, I was looking at my show this morning, and it must be because I'd lost my head a bit. But and I literally started off talking about Ben White, saying, "I've covered this already. I'm not going to talk about this because I ended up going off on a bit of a rant about this." I still did, and 20,000 people have now seen that stupidly. So it's what it is. Yeah, Ben White. New information came out yesterday. I'm sure you saw it. The Telegraph initially this conversation with Steve Holland where he's asked Carl Walker about Manchester City's defensive, tactics and statistics. He's said the same to Ben White. Ben White said, like, I don't know. And however we responded, we don't know the tone, we don't know the pitch, we don't know, we weren't there, we don't know the context, but apparently he made a comment back like, oh, it's because you're not interested in football from that interview he did with Sky. What do you make of the situation? What do you make of Ben White's decision to make himself unavailable for selection? And what do you make of how Southgate has handled the questioning in the press conferences?
I, I can't believe that this is still going on, by the way.
Mm,
And it will, because England are one of the most high profile international squads. Benjamin White plays for the Arsenal. The Arsenal are a dartboard for a lot of people. Many are using this as a tool to just bash him and the club again. But it sounds to me, and again, this is just speculative based on the stories, that
mhm,
he's been embarrassed in front of his teammates. And embarrassment is a really difficult thing to deal with. And I don't think it's fair, because he said that he doesn't watch football, that should be used as a baton against him
mm,
in a setup like that. Doesn't seem to be hurting him when he plays for the Arsenal, not watching football when he goes home, right?
mm,
So also certain managers manage differently, assistant coaches manage differently. I was talking to David Hillier about this on Monday's show about the modern day player maybe needing a little bit more mollycoddling.
mm.
And I'm not saying that Benjamin likes, his arm around him or whatever, but there are
Yeah.
certain players that do have a different approach to the game. And there are
Mm,
managers who understand that. Like, I'm in a team of people, we're sitting around the table, we're talking about releasing a film, and everyone has ideas. And there's a guy who's accountable and responsible for all of it when it comes to budget and people and ideas and everything. And the last thing anyone would do in a room is embarrass someone for having a bad idea.
mm,
It's like when you have a brainstorm and you throw up ideas and someone in the office says, "Oh, that's just crap." That's not the point of the brainstorm. It's to be creative and to work together as a group and come up with great ideas. And it just seems to me like that's exactly what's happened to Ben White. And
mm,
I find it a little distasteful to like use something someone has said against him, not only to do that, but then to do it in front of his teammates. And please take this the right way. I don't want to say the like men thing, but women can just get as embarrassed as men.
sure.
Footballers are built differently,
Mm,
right? And there's a machismo about footballers, and that's kind of how it has been for years and years and years, and that still
yeah,
exists in the game.
that's fair.
And the fact that he may have been, I don't want to use the word that I want to use, but the fact that he could have taken away a little bit of that from
Yeah.
him in front of his peers, I think, just didn't
But
sit
it was a
well with
bit
him.
emasculating, is what you're kind of
Thank you.
saying. Yeah.
Yes. I was,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I'm happy to say it. I
Okay.
think that in those positions, I think that he may have felt embarrassed. He may have felt, it was his first proper. I think it was his first. It definitely was his first tournament. I know he'd been called
Hmm.
up for squads before that, but like in that environment, footballers are arrogant, egotistical, and we know what Ben's a guy. Sorry, Benjamin is a guy that he's very conscious of his appearance. I'm sure he knows how good looking he is, etc., etc. And so to be embarrassed in front of the other players, I just don't think it's good management at all. Like, I just don't think, you think as a manager, I talked about this on this morning show. As a manager, it's your job. It's not like a decision, a choice. It is your reality that you have to understand the different personalities that exist within your group. If you're calling up new players to the squad that you haven't had a chance to get to know, maybe
Mm,
don't out them in front of everybody, not knowing how they're going to respond or react. You
mhm,
know, I also don't really appreciate like the. I get that Southgate wants to protect his coach, but it almost felt like he was being potentially deceiving in saying that there's not an issue when there very clearly was an issue with Steve Holland. Like he said that, I think that the interview he did back in Qatar was like that he said words along the lines of the journalists used words like allegedly, so they weren't willing to kind of commit to the story, which I thought was a bit odd.
mm.
Because we've since seen so much come out about, yes, it was a conversation between Steve Holland, which was the only information we've got regarding why he left the squad. And I also think his silence, Ben White's silence, is very telling in this entire scenario.
I was just about to say that his silence is telling, and also maybe look, my generation, and by the way, there was a comment I caught about someone going into scripts.
Mm,
Matthew, being creative is a byproduct for not being honest. If it's a bad idea or script, you need to be able to be honest. The world, yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about a script that's going to cost millions and millions. We're talking about ideas and sitting around a table and
yeah,
listening to people, right? And clearly, he maybe he didn't listen. Maybe they didn't listen to each other, and here we are in this situation. And in today's world, in this generation, there are things that Generation Xers would be like, you know what, that's a little bit soft. But in today's generation, some people may think that's actually bullying, and that it's not just an embarrassment issue. It's like maybe saying that comes across as a little bit of kind of, soft bullying or whatever.
mm, mm.
Either way, whatever it was, it made Benjamin White feel so uncomfortable that he removed himself from being in the England squad. And if you guys go back and listen to audio from him talking about when he got called up to England for the
Oh
first
yeah,
time when he was at Brighton, he talks about it like it was the greatest thing that ever happened to him in his whole life. So
yeah,
here's a guy that maybe has actually taken that away from him, felt safe being in the setup. He felt like he could trust the coaches. He felt all of these things. And
yeah,
something's clearly happened, Tom, that makes him feel so uncomfortable that for
yeah,
now he's removing himself from the situation to also maybe be an adult about it and think this could cause problems in the camp. And
yeah.
Steve Holland's not going anywhere, so I have to make the decision for myself.
I think it's a great point to bring up the interview he did when he was at Brighton, where he said he's rang his mum and he like cried for an hour, and like it really showed like that emotional side that necessarily we don't see through the hard exterior of Ben White as a 26-year-old these days, and that's fine. I think he's entitled to be that. He doesn't have to show emotion. He doesn't have to get all mushy about things anymore. He doesn't have to be as open as he wants. I've spoken to the guy myself.
Mhm.
He's very, plain, and he does very cold when he does his interviews because he's not keen on doing them, and that he's entitled to not be keen to do them. You don't have to like anything.
Mhm.
But he clearly was so excited about going to England. He was so
Yep.
thrilled to be called up, and he genuinely understood the weight and the honor that it is to be called up for your national team. I'm not saying I hate when it's like the honor of being called up for England, as if that counts more than being called up for any other nation. It doesn't, by the
Right.
way. It's an honor and a privilege to be called out for your country. It doesn't have to be England, but he got that, and I think that to be in that environment where you've built up in your mind what this is going to be, you're in with these world class players. You are considered to be one of the best players in your entire nation to be brought through this group, and you've built this up in your mind to be what it is. And if that was
Mm.
me, because I can only project my own feelings and put myself into Ben's shoes, and I'm not speaking for him, but if it was me, if you're in that dream scenario, and I can speak in that set, when you get into a place where you think you're in your dream scenario and then things happen that you did not anticipate that just ruin it or smear it or destroy it, and you're thinking, I'll give you a good example actually. The first time I did an interview with an Arsenal player, I talk
Mm.
about a story. I never talk about the what was said, because I think, when a player refuses to ask a question, it's done and it's not broadcast. I feel like you have to respect that and also then not bring up the question. Trust me, it wasn't a crazy question. It just was not something that Granit Xhaka at the time wanted to talk about. But the first time I did an interview was with Aaron Ramsdale and Granit Xhaka. And I'd built up in my mind, it's the first time I'd ever gone to the Arsenal training ground. It was our first opportunity to speak to an Arsenal player. And in my mind, I'm building up, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. I was teaching a year ago, and now I'm here driving up to the Arsenal training ground to do my first interview. And the first time I asked a player a question, I got one question in the whole 45-minute session in front of journalists that I've looked up to, read their tweets, read their articles, read everything. And I'm now in a room with the same people asking questions to Arsenal footballers. I ask a question to Granit Xhaka and he says, I've got nothing to say to that question. I left that place in bits. I was broken. I rang about 5 different people telling them that I rang my best man. I rang Georgia for obvious reasons. I rang my boss. I rang everyone because this dream scenario that I'd built up in my head had been ruined. And for the record, I went up to Granit Xhaka after the interview had been done, and I shook his hand. I was like, I meant nothing by that question, by the way. I'm sorry. I didn't even think of anything of it. He was like, mate, don't worry about it. I just didn't want to tackle it. And I was like, that's absolutely fine. And it's like, even though I'd smoothed it, and I've since spoken to Granit Xhaka a number of times after, and it's fine. But in that moment, I was so crushed, and so destroyed. And he wouldn't have known that. So I don't want Xhaka to feel bad. But it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, why in that moment being outed in front of everyone and being made to feel, we're presuming that he did, but, presumably he would have been feeling pretty awful about being made to feel that way in front of the group. And then it was described in the article, I think, as being pretty awkward. Yeah, imagine that dream scenario for you being ruined by someone else, and this being the difference is it seemed that it was kind of a pretty targeted thing. Like my experience was completely, nothing, not Xhaka's fault. He's more entitled to turn down the ability to answer a question. But yeah, just, do you know what I mean?
Seems like he was waiting for the moment, maybe. We don't know that, but listen, it's
What do you mean? Like he thought like he's a player that needs to be taken down a peg?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. And there are coaches like that, there are. And listen, it happened to me once and in a boardroom with my peers. And, I felt like I was it was one of those days where the boss was not having a good day and decided I'm going to make an example of her.
Yeah.
And I removed myself from the room. Number one, I didn't want to see anyone see me get upset. Number two, I didn't want to say anything that I was going to regret. And these things happen. I won't name the filmmaker or the situation, but it happened. But the good thing is that person then came up to me and apologized, and explained they were having a bad day. So we don't know how it was delivered. Also, we don't know how it was said. We don't know the situation, the tone, because that matters as well. How you say things to people, how they take what you say to them as well. And it seems like, did he try to mend the bridge with Benjamin White? Has that step happened? I would love to know that from one of the journalists who's kind of digging into this and stuff like that. And it made me feel a lot better when that person apologized, Tom, because I knew I didn't do anything wrong in that. And when you haven't done anything wrong, is it a case of someone was saying he didn't do his homework? He was given homework, didn't do it. It sounded like more of an off-the-cuff question because he asked Carl Walker, in the England setup, who cares about what Manchester City have done defensively? Like stats, and is that important? Am I being naive? Does that matter what City's stats are to England? Does it not matter what Carl Walker's stats are or why you've chosen him? Why are you asking a blanket comment about Manchester City's defense and shots and things like that? I just don't get it.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's a situation that we'll see solved or get more information until Southgate's team move on, when they eventually will. And if a new coach comes in and White's called up and he goes straight in, I think that will speak volumes.
That's what he's waiting for. What do you think he's waiting? That's why he stayed silent.
Yeah,
that is exactly
I think
what's going to happen.
That'll say all he needs to say is if it changes, if he gets called up. I just hope that it doesn't affect his future chances under a different coach. I really don't. I mean, even from Southgate's perspective, to be fair to Southgate, he said the door is 100% open if Ben would change his mind, which he should say, and fair play to him for saying. He shouldn't say, we're really disappointed about this. Like, I hate some of the media reaction to this. the classic kind of, British Bulldog tattoo responses of
Mm-hmm.
how dare he turn his back on England? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a clue. And it's so, what's the word of unempathetic? Is that the word? Um,
Unsympathetic or unempathetic?
Unsympathetic,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
lacking in empathy. Like, it's
Yeah.
such a, it really gets on my nerves, that
You know
response.
why? You know why, Tom? Because you know, is it okay if it's not? And I'm not saying this is Benjamin because we've seen, like we said, the reaction when he first got chosen for England. But is it okay for a modern day player to not be interested in playing international football? Is that okay with people? Are we going to judge people? We've become such a judgmental, critical society. We don't know what people want to do in their lives, what they think. May have
Mm,
family issues. So during international duty, there are family things to be taken care of, or things they want to do, or things outside of football they're interested in. I don't think someone isn't in love or loves their country because they choose not to play for them. And I just think that in the modern world, where there's so much football and you're being asked so much as a player to want to just maybe do other things or not have that interest and commit yourself to your club, I don't think that's such a bad thing.
mm. Yeah, someone asked me in the chat, what do I think about the England flag on the new shirt being changed? I've just done a quick Google because I wasn't even aware of it, to be honest.
I don't know
Yeah, the
about
England
that
flag's
either.
been changed, on the back of the collar, like not the badge on the front, but on the
Hmm.
collar, on the back of it, you have the normal, like, red vertical line, but the horizontal
Hmm.
red line has been changed to a navy, light blue, purple stripe on one side, and then it inverts the same three colors on the other side. It says the Nike spokesperson said the England 2024 home kit disrupts history with a modern take on a classic. The trim on the cuffs takes its hue from the training gear worn by the England's 1966 heroes, with a gradient of blues and reds topped with a purple. The same colors also feature an interpretation of the St George's icon flag on the back of the collar. Um, my
Ooh,
honest
change
answer is
scares people.
do you know what my honest answer is? I couldn't give a flying. I don't care. Why would I care? It's a flag on the back of a shirt. Like, do I feel any less English because the flag's like, no? People talk about, like, people being woke, or like if it's done in a certain way because it's meant to appease
Crikey.
people. Like, I just think it's so mad. Like, the people that are scared that we have to change things about offending are the people that get most offended
Yes,
by
true.
these little tweaks and changes. It's crazy. I couldn't, honestly, I could not care less that they've done that. Like, cool, designers had a go at, doing up the flag. Does that mean England's flag is going to change? Are we now going to change the flag of England because
You know
this
what I
shirt has
laugh
got a
about
different?
this is we live in a society, right? It's the same thing with the photo scandal, whatever. We
Mm,
live social media and Instagram is all about filters,
mm,
changing this. What apps, PS Express or whatever it is, all these apps touch up your face, take away the blemish, take away the hair,
yeah.
take away that, do this, do, and then I just don't get it. It's just all nonsense. I hope that there's this coming. I hope there's this moment where everyone just stops being absolutely. I'm going to say the word stupid about it. It's
Mm,
crazy.
it is
Why is
crazy. Yeah.
change like we're changing ourselves through social media every single day, and you're going to get offended because a flag has been designed in a different way for a shirt for a tournament. I
Yeah, it's
just
not
I
even a
just don't
flag,
understand
it's
it.
just the crop, like, it's just the red cross has been tweaked with the horizontal line is now a
Do
couple
you
of
think
different
this has
colours.
been a whole soapbox episode?
Yeah, we've gone off on some proper tangents on this show, I tell you. But yeah, it's like I always kind of look at things in certain ways. It's like, if because Zeno says, "But it's our country's flag," and I'm like, if the English flag changed, right? Imagine tomorrow, the king comes out and says, "We're changing the English flag," and it's changing from red and white to purple and green. I don't know, I've picked two colors out of random. Please don't read into that as any specifics. I've picked two random colors. Um, how would my life be any different? It wouldn't. My life wouldn't change at all. I genuinely, it wouldn't affect me in any way at all. I just, maybe I lack the patriotism some have, and I completely respect people's rights to be patriotic or whatever. But It just
But
wouldn't
it
affect
doesn't
me.
mean if you feel differently about it, you're not patriotic. This is the problem that we have in our world today. Because you don't get angry about something or you don't
Yeah.
find it offensive, doesn't mean I've got the Greek flag behind me, the American flag, the Union Jack, and the St. George's flag. I represent all the countries. The only one missing is Cyprus because you can't get Cyprus. It's really hard to get a Cyprus flag out here.
Yeah.
And I would, I would hang them proudly if there was a switch to it, or if there was a design that was kind of cool that went back to historical times and it evoked something. Yeah, it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, I don't know why people be so upset about it. I just don't really get it. Like at the end of the day, England's made up of so many different races, nationalities, cultures, countries, influences through history.
Mhm.
Like I'd love the fact I can go down the road and get a Chinese for dinner. I can go get an Indian. If we were so uptight about everything having to be as English as possible, I wouldn't be able to go and do that.
Mhm.
So,
And it doesn't
so
take away that you're,
of course not.
you're an Englishman who's proud of, being that. And
Yeah,
by the way, you just
when
made me
England play, I want
hungry.
them to win because I was born here. Like, I was born here. I want England to win. I'm an England fan. But I tell you what, if it's between Arsenal in the Champions League or England win the World Cup, it's Arsenal every day, mate. Like, it's not even a
That's
competition.
what David Hillier said.
It's not a competition at all.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's not a competition whatsoever. And look, I can see Zeno in the chat is very upset.
What's
Says you
happening?
need to learn some history and get out of London. I'm not in London, by the way. I'm about 50 minutes outside of it already. So technically, I've already achieved part one of your request. Leave people alone. Let people get on with what they want to do. Like you're more than welcome to go do what you like.
Yeah.
Learn more about history if you want to talk to people about history, but maybe talk to people that want to listen. I'm not keen. I can't. I'd rather learn about Arsenal's history. Myself. So people care too much about other people, is what I think sometimes, like in the wrong ways. So the only things I care about regarding other people is making sure they're all right. As you fit,
Mhm.
healthy, happy. That's what I care about. But yeah, I really couldn't. Really couldn't.
Exactly.
Really couldn't.
Amira's comments funny. I think you're going to have to rename this show, Tom. Basically, the most international break topic conversation
We are.
ever.
This is great. This is international break classic content. Yeah, we're talking about being international and loving
Ah.
everything to do with the influences as well. So yeah, you go.
Started off
Uh,
with you bringing up the Brexit thing
yeah,
about
as
the
soon as I
Norway
mentioned the
shirt.
B words, I tell you, I upset some other people the other day when I brought that up. I said it on the show about the Ben White thing, about the reaction to, what Ben White's saying, that he's turned his back on England and stuff, and I really upset. But people are like, I'm offended that you brought that up. I'm like, okay, cool, cool, okay. It's not something to be offended by in any way. There are certain things that absolutely are offensive. That's really not. It's
Not,
really
yeah.
not. Honestly, me and Sophie have
Hilarious.
sat here and done shows where we've talked about homophobia in the sport and the reasons why we need to bring this to the forefront of the conversation. And I had more people upset about that show. I had more people upset about the fact that we were brought that up than and in the same place and the same thing, the same people that are getting moaning about an England flag changing.
It's
Aren't
crazy, isn't
aren't
it?
jumping onto that show and saying, "This is great, this is keep bringing this to the forefront." It's mad. Yeah, look, Keith,
It's really
stick to
crazy.
football. Honestly, it's
We
so
weren't talking about politics. They
we
are. We're
weren't. It was
talking
actually the
about
people in the chat. Like
Tammy's.
we're
I
talking
see
about
Tammy's in there. It's
we're talking
not
about
us.
football as well because it's like it's the England football team flag. And I talked about this honestly. Stick to
Then why?
football.
What have you started?
I also get it's also what I find really funny is like this is a show that people can choose to listen to. Like you don't have to listen to this.
Yeah,
You don't. You don't. You
it's
don't.
true.
And
That's
I
the
think
other thing people don't
maybe
realize.
I think maybe Keith was joking. To be fair to him, but it's people forget that you have a choice. Like you have a choice to if you want to listen to something or not. If you don't, it's goodness me. Leonid says protect the miners. We're good at going back far now. Oh dear me. Anyway, that's quite a nice end to today's show.
Oh,
Thank you for
didn't even
listening,
talk about
people.
Saka.
Yeah, I know. It's by the way,
Pop-Tarts.
just for reference, Saka's precaution. That's what I've been told. It's just a precaution. So chill about City. Don't worry too much about that. We'll hear from Mikel Arteta next week in the press conference, of course. So I look forward to that. But yes, we'll end the show with this one from Amira. Sophie, what's your favourite curry?
Oh, I love a chicken korma. I'm a lightweight, but
Oh,
I
you're a
do.
korma. Fair enough.
Oh yeah, I love
I
a
have absolute
korma.
respect for it. I like it, but my father-in-law loves he has like Vindaloo heat on
Oof,
everything.
it's a
Yeah.
bit much for me, but yeah, I'm a bit of a lightweight. You guys have made me so hungry. I need lunch. Lunchtime for me
I've
now.
got chili in the slow cooker going on downstairs.
Oh, good one. We had chili the other day. Nice. Very good,
That's
Thomas.
the night.
How was your bangers and mash the other night?
Oh, it was good. Yeah.
Yeah?
Very good. Very British. It was- I felt really English for my bangers and mash the other day. I got my red and white flag round my shoulders, and just had my bangers and mash with some gravy. I felt really English that day.
Ah,
It
that's
was great.
brilliant.
They
Yeah.
were, yeah.
Well, I should go order a kebab.
I'm going to have bratwurst and mash next week and really upset
You traitor.
Oh dear, it was great. Thank you,
Jesus.
everyone in the chat box for listening. Genuinely, thank you to all of you. Even though some of you haven't disagreed with our views, that's fine. It's all about different opinions, and we appreciate your listenership. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. But most importantly, please do show Sophie plenty of love and go and subscribe to the Highbury Squad. Sophie, please give yourself a shout out.
Yeah, you did it for me. Brilliant stuff. Come visit us. We do some good stuff over there. Back on Monday live, taking advantage of these next few days working on a Arsenal-related project, which I'm very excited to share with everyone in the coming days. And David Hillier and I are back on Monday. Keep sending your love for Super Kev. He's doing great. Cheers, Tom.
There you go. Indeed, we're wishing all the best to Kev, and hoping he is. You see, this is what I mean when there's so many better things, not better things, rather. There's so many more important things to be worrying about in this world, and obviously we wish and send all of our well wishes towards Kev at the moment as he continues his recovery. So there you go. Please do leave plenty of love to Kev on Twitter if you have it, and in the comment sections of the Highbury Squad podcast. Lovely stuff. Right, Sophie, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Mainly listening this show. I think I proper went on some rants.
I loved it. It's one of my favorites.
It was great. Right, I'll see you all very soon. Have a fantastic evening. Stay safe, stay well, happy and respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal and up the England. Yes.